Okay, Butch Ware on the other side of this.
So I'll tell this one story just because I tell this story to my team. So my father was a locksmith that had a 6th grade education, and he hustled to make ends meet. He stayed strapped at all times. He was a rough man, you know. And my mother, she kidnapped us out of his house to take us to like a battered women's shelter when I was a kid. She went into hiding. You know, we moved from DC to Minneapolis at that time, and so and you know, he was dealing with mental health, you know, issues and addiction and other stuff. But he was also a beautiful man, brilliant man, loving man, and he had a very unique nature about him, you know, that was raised, you know, in Georgia before he came to DC. So when he took me to learn how to swim, it was at Rock Creek Park in Washington D.C. And he took me to Rock Creek Park, and he grabbed me by the arm and he threw me in the water and said, "Sink or swim, boy."
Same thing.
Is the cameras running? We need this then, because if it's the same thing, we got this. This can just be for our own purposes. Can we get this or no?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, cool. So he threw me in the water and he said, "Sink or swim, boy." And so I started to flail around because I didn't know how to swim, right? And I'm you know, kicking my legs, you know, and yelling. And then I started to sink because I don't know how to swim, right? And that's when I realized that he had thrown me in exactly enough water that if I put my heel down on the stream bed and lifted my neck up, I could just breathe. He knew how deep the water was. I didn't know how deep the water the water was. And he was throwing me, he never explained this, mind you, right? And I'm 4 years old at the time, but like I've reflected on it over the years. I realized like he was throwing me in exactly enough water that I would experience like the urgency with which you have to move your limbs when your life is at stake. And the futility of all of that movement if you don't know what you're doing. I learned to swim within a week. You know what I'm saying? And so it was, and granted, objectively, that was child abuse. Like I would never do that to my child. And, you know, like there was a lesson in it. And I tell my team all the time, like, listen, you know, like this campaign, I ran for vice president. I know this is gonna look crazy. I'm throwing y'all in the water because I know where the bottom is, and like we're either gonna sink or swim, and you're gonna have to learn, you know, through the process, because there's no substitute for swimming and learning how to swim.
You know what? So similar situation. I remember looking up and seeing 2 guys smoking cigarettes and like laughing,
laughing their asses off.
And then I also remember when it was time to like institute safety. When it was it was time to be like, hey, you're safe. Like if this gets too much for you, we're here.
We're here. Yeah.
How do you institute that into your team, knowing that you know what you're getting into by running for governor? They might not know. How do you connect back to them and let them know that you got
I have that conversation with the team, you know, from the beginning. And I also tell them, like, you know, hurt people. I'm not here to reproduce, you know, trauma. Like that's actually not it. I want us to like actually address this. My door is always open. You know, speak to me about any and everything, because ultimately, like, what makes us different in the end is the culture inside the institution. So the culture is an abolitionist culture. It's not built on structures of punishment. It's built on community and accountability. And I believe, like Assata Shakur said, that all revolutionary activity is rooted in profound love. The duopoly runs through hate and through fear. They're always fear mongering. The other side does this, the other side does that, right? That's how they have to govern.
Certainly.
We'll beat them because love is stronger than hate. Positive incentives are more powerful than negative incentives. And ultimately, you do not start building a healed, sound culture on Freedom Day. You have to build it through the revolutionary activity itself. You have to instantiate it on a daily basis inside whatever you're building. And that's the biggest thing that a lot of folks fail in, is that they don't understand. They're so busy trying to slay the beast, deconstruct something. Whereas what I learned in West Africa, I lived in Senegal for years, learned to speak the Wolof language fluently. That's where I did my PhD research. And they say the child of Adam never releases what their hand is holding until they're reaching for something better. Right? You'll hold on to a hot coal if it's all you got. So our politics and our culture is one of aspiration. It's one of actually giving people something to hope for, not an enemy to attack, right? Because in the end, the construction of something is infinitely more beautiful and needed, right? Than just a constant railing against what the system does to us. What are we building?
Absolutely.
What are we building?
Is of Dr. Butch Ware. Got to make sure I introduce you.
Yeah, let's get it in.
We have our first California gubernatorial candidate on Higher Learning. You're the first. We've talked to some other.
It's an honor.
We've talked to some other people that might be running for president. And
Maybe a current governor. Interesting. He was on very interesting. I hope we can talk about that because I find it interesting that he found things interesting.
Yeah, I find it interesting that I don't know what he finds interesting because it seems like he changes his mind every time somebody asks him a question.
Yeah, Lord.
Butch Ware is running for governor. It is a crowded governor field right now. He is. Born in Washington, D.C., grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Yeah, south side of Minneapolis,
Now you are a professor at UCSB.
Yep.
What's your discipline there?
So I teach a lot of different courses. I'm trained in African history, African American history, Islamic history. I work basically on the history of like Black revolutionary movements, both in continental Africa and the diaspora. So it's the struggle against capitalism, imperialism, white supremacy, literally going back to like the 1500s on the African continent into slave rebellions here. And so I just finished my last class, my Black revolutionaries class, and now I'm on sabbatical. So I get to focus on the campaign for the next few months. I teach a hip hop history class because I grew up in the hip hop era. I never really wanted to be anything other than an MC. And so my students in that class, they write their final paper on hip hop in the carceral state. So like they read Police State. They have the lyrics, Police State by Dead Prez, I Want to Kill Sam by Ice Cube, right? And they do an analysis of like how hip hop has dealt with the development of the carceral state. So I try to keep things culturally relevant. I was called into action running for office and I speak in public and do those things, but people that know me know that I'm a teacher. Like that when you really find me in my lane and in my pocket, it's when I'm teaching. And I love to teach. So yeah.
I literally was just saying before you came in that I cannot imagine myself going back to school. I cannot do more school, but then I hear what you're teaching and the way you talk, and you're actually making me more interested. Real quick before I ask my first question. What was your MC name?
Beware.
Okay.
Just Butch Ware, and I put it in the in our most recent. So hopefully we'll get to this, but I believe that I'm the first candidate for major office in history to release political ads in the form of diss tracks.
Oh wow!
So I've never heard that before. I did They Not Like Us, and then and we just did a Shook Ones remix that's about them trying to knock me off the ballot. And we got one that's about to come off about the billionaires that are behind both Team Blue and Team Red called Mask Off. So I did it over Future's beat Mask Off.
Wow.
Yeah. So we'll work the politics and the bars in.
I love that.
Lord willing and the creek don't rise, like we used to say back home.
For our audience who might not be as familiar with you, I mean, you already have told us so much about like who you are, what you do, a little bit of how you grew up, but being a part of the Green Party and what initially motivated you to even want to run for governor of California, can you talk a little bit about that and kind of what hope you plan to bring to the state of California?
Yeah. So nobody was caught more unprepared, like psychologically, for running for office than me. I never considered running for office. Never. I've been a community educator, an organizer, an activist my whole life. I literally organized my first Pan-Africanist revolutionary reading group when I was 19, right? I'm not joking. And I'll tell the long version of the story, as we get further in, but I want to make sure I answer Rachel's question. So all that's to say is I never really considered electoral politics as the route. Mutual aid plus direct action and community education, that was my lane. In 2024, with the ongoing genocide, people were following my social media account because I was one of the people that was trying to tell what the Black liberation tradition had said about standing 10 toes down for Palestine, about what Malcolm had said in Zionist logic, and how Malcolm said this is a white Jewish population being empowered by white imperialists to move Arabs off their land. Malcolm understood Zionism as a regional variant of white supremacy. And so he acted accordingly, right? So I got a lot of attention on my social media feed at that time. And one of the things that was happening is that those of us that were liberation minded, you know, on the so-called left, we were looking at the Black and Palestinian solidarity and the struggle in that moment. So my Palestinian American colleagues were like, we're supporting Jill Stein in this upcoming election. And they said, would you like to interview her on your social media feed? So I interviewed her. And we had a great conversation. We can come back to that, but I want to get to the question, so I'll try to be the brief version of this. 24 hours after I hosted Jill on my social media platform, she asked if I would consider running as the VP.
Wow.